Chapter 2. The Inherited Mind. Thousands of years ago, Plato described a group of people chained inside a subterranean cave since birth. Bound by their necks and legs, they were physically incapable of turning their heads toward the light of a fire, burning behind them. Between that fire and their backs ran a raised walkway where operators carried shapes, statues, and figures carved from stone and wood. The light cast the silhouettes of these artificial shapes onto the flat rock wall in front of the prisoners, because they had never known anything else. The shadows became their definition of truth, not an approximation of truth, not a starting point for understanding truth. The shadows were truth, the only truth available, the only truth imaginable, the only truth that had ever existed inside the boundaries of their world. If a prisoner was forcibly released and dragged out into the blinding glare of the sun, the experience would not feel like a gift. The light would hurt. The vastness of the landscape would feel overwhelming. Everything familiar would collapse at once. The shapes he had spent his life naming and categorizing would be revealed as shadows of copies, not even shadows of real things, but shadows of artificial representations of real things. 2 layers of removal from reality, and he had never once suspected it. The certainty he carried into the sunlight would dissolve the moment the sunlight arrived. Yet if he remained outside long enough for his eyes to adjust, he would arrive at a staggering realization. What he had spent his entire life treating as reality was only a collection of shadows, interpreted through limitation. Plato wrote this more than 2,000 years ago. He was not describing prisoners. He was describing us. The prisoners were not merely passive observers of the wall. That is the detail most people miss when they encounter this story for the first time. They were a society. They talked about the shadows, named them, categorized them, argued about them, built explanations around them, developed sophisticated systems for predicting which shadows would appear next, and what patterns governed their movement. Over time, entire bodies of knowledge emerged from the collective effort to understand the wall. Status would follow. Some prisoners would become remarkably skilled at predicting which shadows appeared next. Others would teach those patterns to younger prisoners who had not yet developed the same fluency. Entire hierarchies would form around the ability to navigate and explain a world that was never fully understood in the first place, because the people explaining it were operating from the same limitation as everyone else, and none of them knew it. The community would call these people experts, authorities, teachers, perhaps even priests.